So I am DJ Joy to the world, otherwise known as Joy. Family call me Joey and government calls me Joita. I am a radio producer and DJ from Hertfordshire. I am of Bengali Indian heritage, and my current obsession right now is Doja Cat. I can't get enough of her. I'm like so obsessed. I love her artistry. I love her dancing. I love her quirkiness, just everything about her. And apart from that, you can probably find me lying down 70% of the time. So my spirit animal is probably a sloth. So that's me in a nutshell.
I'm sorry, that was the best intro you've ever had on this show. That was so concise and it was so like...
So much in one sentence.
I love that.
So, DJing, how did you get into that? Because it's a relatively recent thing for you, right? Only the past couple of years.
Yeah, that's right. So I only started DJing in like May 2020. And that was when it was lockdown 1. I just finished working because I was made redundant. And so I had my decks for like a year before that, and I just didn't have the time to like touch it at all. And so lockdown came around, it wasn't working. So I was like, okay, let me just pick these decks up and just see what it's about. And because no one was doing anything, I was like, okay, I've got all the time in the world. Let me just watch some YouTube videos, teach myself how to DJ. And after like a couple of months, I was like, oh, I'm pretty good at this. And so it just started to grow from there. Started releasing mixes. My friends were like, oh, you're pretty good, you know. And I was like, yeah, I am. And then just started putting myself out there on social media, started getting spotted by different people, by different radio stations, got asked to do guest mixes, got asked to do sets. And ever since then, it's just been growing and growing. So it's been a whirlwind and it's all happened really quickly. But I'm super grateful.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think considering that you've only been in this for like, what, just over 2 years, like you have achieved quite a lot with it.
Yeah, definitely.
So in regards to the stuff that you usually do when you're DJing, I'd say from what I've heard, it's mainly like R&B focused. But then obviously in your producer role, you've done quite a lot of stuff with Asian Network.
Yeah.
Would you say that even if you're not necessarily using music from South Asian background, that this is still something that's important to you, like your ethnic heritage? And do you like try to incorporate it into your work at all, or is it just something that you sort of have in the back of your mind?
Yeah, it's definitely something that's come into the forefront of my mind over the last couple of years. Because growing up, I grew up in quite like a white area in Hertfordshire. So a lot of the time I was quite embarrassed about my Bengali Indian heritage. But it wasn't until like uni where I met my best friend who was quite into her Indian culture. And she was the one who introduced me into like all the songs and the films. And I was like, oh, it's actually pretty cool. Like I shouldn't be embarrassed of this. So yeah, it's only quite recently that I've been into my Indian heritage, and more so it's become more important to me, just because I feel like Indian heritage and South Asian heritage isn't looked as being cool, whereas Indian culture is cool. And so over the couple of years, I've been quite dedicated into like not even proving, just showing off how South Asian culture is cool, and like the amazing culture that we have, the amazing food we have, the amazing music we have. And so when I started DJing, I have started to put to the forefront more South Asian artists and showcasing more female South Asian artists, because there's just not enough of them out there, and they are so talented. So I think, yeah, over the probably 2 years or so, ever since my best friend from uni has got me into it and just said, oh, you don't need to be embarrassed. There's nothing to be embarrassed of. And started showing me that there are so many amazing things about Indian culture. As time is going on, I'm embracing my culture even more and more.
On that note, obviously you talked about female artists, South Asian female artists. Obviously, the DJing industry, like a lot of industries, I would say is probably male dominated. So, or certainly in terms of like the opportunities that are out there, a lot of them will probably go to men, if not white men as well. So obviously, as a South Asian female DJ, how have you found it? Like, because obviously you have, like we said, you have achieved quite a lot within the space of 2 years, but obviously I would have thought that it would have been quite a hard industry and space to actually navigate. So how have you managed to achieve what you have?
It has been hard, but it's also not been hard. It's been hard because you have like parents saying, oh, you need a proper job, how are you going to be a DJ, it's not a proper career. So I've had that sort of in the back of my mind that, oh, my parents aren't like over the moon about it. But then most people that I come across day to day, when I tell them I'm a DJ, they're like, oh my God, it's so amazing, you're a female South Asian DJ, like we don't see much of that. So I think yeah, it's because I've got a lot more confidence within myself, and I'm not ashamed of anything. And I do feel like a lot of males get the first opportunity, because when I walk into like clubs and bars and sports shops, a lot of the time I do see males in there, a lot of white males. And it's got to the point where I go up to the manager, I'm like, why don't you have any females in there? And they're just like, oh, yeah, we've got someone booked in next month. Like they don't know what to say, but it gets to a point where you're like, this is taking the mick. Like I'm just seeing men constantly at every single venue. There are so many females out there. Like, yeah, there's probably not as many female DJs, South Asian female DJs, as there are male, but they are there. It just takes people a little bit more effort to find them. So it does become frustrating when I see like the same DJs on the lineup, the same type of guys in sports shops and bars and stuff. But to me, it's all about just questioning people and just asking why, where are all the females? Because they're there. And when they probably don't even think about it themselves, they probably, it's never popped into their minds, like, oh, maybe I should get a South Asian female or a female DJ. So to me, it's all about starting up that conversation. And for me, it's not been too hard. I've found quite a lot of opportunities, but I think that's because I am so vocal, and I'm not afraid to like make people feel uncomfortable and ask them questions like, why not? Why aren't you doing this? So it's hard, yes and no.
Yeah, I feel like we sort of need people like you to sort of maybe pave the way for future DJs, female DJs, South Asian DJs, that sort of thing, who maybe aren't as confident. Hopefully they'll be able to get those opportunities without needing to like sort of elbow barge people to be like, look, like, take me seriously, exactly. Sort of thing.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. So obviously, when we were thinking about getting you on the show, and one of the reasons why I thought, oh, this would be a good time is because it's June and it's Pride Month. And obviously I am aware that you are part of the LGBTQ plus community. Do you mind just telling us a little bit about that and how you were able to become a bit more comfortable and confident in your sexuality? Because again, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like this is maybe certainly you being as comfortable and confident is something that's been quite recent, right? Like not like a couple of years ago, or you tell us.
Yeah, it's only been like a couple of years since I've been like really confident about posting on my Instagram about my sexuality. But growing up, I've always been attracted. So I'm bisexual. I've always been attracted to women. And actually, before I was attracted to men, I was attracted to women. And I remember growing up like thinking, oh my God, I hope I'm not gay. I don't want to be gay. And then as I got to like 16, 17, all my friends were talking about guys. And so I was only thinking about men. And so I thought, okay, I'm straight, don't worry. So I was only dating guys. I got into my first relationship, which was with a male. And so liking women just was pushed to the back of my mind, I guess, into my subconscious. I wasn't thinking about it. And so for a long time, I was like, okay, I'm not gay, not into women, I'm straight. And then I broke up with my boyfriend. And that's when it started like to resurface into my mind. Like, okay, I probably was right. I probably am attracted to women. And then I started to just read more, not even about sexuality, just started reading more about politics, about race, and just reading more and becoming more intelligent and more confident within myself just made me more confident about my sexuality and everything in turn. And then it wasn't until I started DJing and started meeting other lesbians, because growing up, I was never surrounded by any other gay people because they were probably just all in the closet. And so going into the music industry and meeting other gay individuals who are like openly gay just sort of really, it was like it cemented the fact that I am into women. And so that was when I was like, okay, all these people are open to being gay, like why should I be so embarrassed about it? And that coupled with like my just being more intellectually like aware of everything, like politics, race, sexuality, that in turn just made me more confident to just live my true self. So it's only, since I started DJing, that is when I became like properly confident about myself and just wanting to like show off like, this is who I am. If you don't like it, then that's your problem.
That's really cool. I've never thought about how you like reading, like you said, about not even stuff maybe even relating to your sexuality actually just made you a lot more confident in yourself and just being yourself, because ultimately obviously sexuality is a thing, but it's like it's not as tangible as and black and white as we like to make it. So just like at the end of the day, it's just you being you, and it's nice that you are now in a position where you're able to be a lot more confident about that. Obviously we talked a bit about you being a South Asian individual, and I think we all know that not just in regards to like sexuality, gender, but and a lot of things, the stereotype is that growing up in a South Asian household, there's a lot of pressure to like confine to the norm essentially, and like, oh, what will they think, that sort of thing. So how have you found that? Obviously, because the past couple of years, so you're like mid to late 20s now, right? So like you're adult basically, but still, I feel like as a South Asian individual, we still sort of like, even at this age, sort of have it in our minds, like thinking like, oh, but like I still need to do right by my parents. I don't want to stress them out, that sort of thing. So what's your personal experience been like?
So I think since I was growing up, I was always thought, do what your parents want you to do. Make sure you don't shame them. Make sure they're always going to be proud of you. And that was always just instilled in me. So for a long time, I had that in the back of my mind. But it just got to the point where I thought, I need to just live my life and whatever makes me happy. So coming out to them was quite difficult. They were obviously not over the moon about it, because when they were growing up, they were never with anyone who was openly gay. And that was never taught to them that it was okay to be gay. And so they've never been used to that sort of situation or sort of surrounding. So we can't really expect our parents to be okay with it straight away. And I think my parents, they can be quite emotional. I think with a lot of brown parents, they can be quite reactive and quite emotional, and they can just say whatever they want to say without thinking about the other person's feelings. So I did have to deal with that, but because I know that this must have been such a shock for them, because they raised 3 daughters, they had like a vision of, okay, they're all going to grow up, they're going to have a great job, they're going to get married and have kids. And when one child like completely knocks that off course, it just like completely catches them off guard, which I understand. So it just takes like patience and kindness and communicating properly to like lead them through the process, because it is going to be quite a hard process for them. So I think for me, just telling them that I was bisexual and saying I'm probably going to get married to a woman, it was a shock to them, but I know that they're not going to disown me or anything like that. I know they're probably going to make some hurtful comments, but it's just a part of their shock, and that I just need to give them time to process it, and just time heals. So you just got to be understanding in these kind of situations, and know that they've just grown up in a different time.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting that you take that approach with it, the kind of like more gentle approach. I think it's very easy like for people in our generation to expect that, okay, fair enough, they're not going to agree, but then they're wrong for not agreeing, but not understanding why they don't agree, just because we haven't had that same upbringing where it was quite taboo to be openly, that open about your sexuality if you weren't heterosexual, do you know what I mean? So I think it's quite refreshing to hear taking the perspective of like, let's understand why they might be apprehensive or unsure or confused about it. And yeah, they might say some hurtful things, but at the end of the day, like if you're going to get through it, if you need to see it as like a process, and they will come out the other end of it, you know, hopefully that they're happy with you, and like, you know, their understanding of it, and they're accepting of it. But it's gonna take time. You know, you can't expect them to like be like super accepting of it straight away, maybe. and there's reasons for that. And I think it's refreshing to hear that, because I think it's very easy to just get angry, especially if someone might be reactive and say something hurtful and not taking the time to understand why they're saying that hurtful thing, or what led them to like believe think the way they think.
I think ultimately you have been doing, don't fight fire with fire, because if they're reacting emotively and then you react emotively, it's just going to be like a tennis thing, back and forth, like, and not going to actually get anywhere. Though I'm really glad to hear that, though, because I remember when we first met, I don't think you had come out at that point. No. So I'm glad to hear like that it is in a better place now and like moving forward, definitely.
Yeah, it's a work in progress. That's all it takes.
Yeah. So a bit like on the flip side of that now, so we've obviously spoken a bit about what you as an individual have like taken upon yourself to be like almost like more mature and understanding of how your parents or the community would react to you coming out. But what do you think South Asian communities in general can do, like not even necessarily adults but also like younger generations as well? Like what can people do in order to move into a place where LGBTQ plus people feel like they can come out and they are accepted, that sort of thing?
That's a tough one. I would probably say make sure you're setting boundaries with family members. So just being clear is if someone's going to make a hurtful comment to you, you need to make it clear that's not okay and that you need to apologize and that you're going to take time away from them until they're ready to apologize. And for me, that's what I found has been quite good, just setting your boundaries and just making sure you're clear with what is and isn't okay. So I think that's one thing that we can do to help other LGBTQ communities. And another thing is just surround yourself with, so for example, on your social media feed, just make sure it's all positive about LGBTQ communities. So make sure you're following drag queens or LGBTQ communities or transgender individuals who help you to embrace your identity. So I think those two things are really important to help the South Asian community sort of accept more, is to set clear boundaries and know when to say no and say, no, this is hurting my feelings. And also having clear communication, make sure you're talking about feelings, make sure you're not shutting off your feelings from one another, because I think that's another big thing that I've learned throughout all of this, is that you need to make sure you're talking to each other, make sure you're talking to each other about your feelings and what's going on and what you think has been, what you once thought was okay and what you don't think is okay. It's just having that two-way conversation is important, and making sure your feed is full of positive LGBTQ content.
I think like it's all about creating like safety, a place where people feel like safe enough and comfortable enough and open enough to speak about these things and go into like depth about what might be affecting them or making them happy or making them sad or anything. And like you said, like social media is such a powerful tool, so making that like a safe place and a positive and uplifting community, not even just to, even for like heterosexual people to view content creators that belong to the LGBTQ plus community, even them to view that content and engage with it is still creating a wider community of like people that are just accepting of it. And then for the next generation, it just becomes a lot more normalized and we don't have to have difficult conversations all the time, and it just will like flow more seamlessly into like what's like accepted and what's the standard.
I think as well, like it's a bit with regards to what you're saying about keeping it positive on like your social media and stuff. I think you find a similar thing with I think race as well. I think there's a lot of because obviously we live in a world where so much racism still exists and happens. There's a lot of scope for you to remain politically active and aware, but then sort of bring yourself down in the process without realizing that you can be anti-racist but also just, that doesn't mean filling your feed with like loads of like keeping yourself aware with like the latest, or it doesn't just mean that keeping yourself aware of the latest goings on, etc. It also means just embracing like and loving people, all people of color, like all cultures, that sort of thing. Like, it's just about keeping it, like, just loving that as well, and just making sure, turning it into literally into a positive thing, which I think we're a bit guilty of as well. Maybe we need to do a bit more celebrating rather than moaning all the time. But it's hard when you've got only 2 hours to fit in everything that goes on. But yeah, moving on to your current relationship, which I believe is also your first lesbian relationship as well that you're currently in. A lot of stuff going on here, right? Because obviously we've talked about how you've had to come quite a long way to accept and be comfortable in yourself as a South Asian female member of the LGBTQ plus community, and now you are also in an interracial relationship, which then also has a notable age gap between the two of you as well. So it's like another two things sort of like thrown in there. So like, how have you found that then, especially considering it's your first lesbian relationship as well?
It's been difficult, not gonna lie. So I met my current partner. So I was doing a radio show with a company, and they were trying to find DJs for this company, and she found me for this radio show. And so that's how we met. And so she's 41, I'm 27, so there's a 14-year age gap, and we met through work, so there's all these different things. She's also in recovery. She's been sober for 6 years, which is amazing. And so yeah, it's been quite up and down. It's been difficult because I can't just treat it like a normal relationship that I've had before, a normal straight relationship. I need to be a lot more patient, much more better at communicating, which I'm not used to. I feel like I can be quite explosive and just like react and be angry, which I can't do in this relationship because my partner's just not used to that. And because she's in recovery, she's used to communicating in a different way because she's been to rehab and all these different things. So it's been hard because because when we first got together, I sort of had like a bit of a meltdown, like, oh, this is too scary, like I've never been with a girl before, this is going to be too much. And so I sort of ended things, which is obviously I acted upon my own feelings, but I didn't take into consideration another person's feelings, and someone else's feelings got hurt. But I'm quite lucky in the fact that she's very understanding, and we're both quite patient. So yeah, it's been up and down, but we've both learned from each other, and we've both grown with being with each other. And she was the one who found me for radio, so I've literally got her to thank for my whole career, like my DJ and radio career. Like I would not be here without her, and she just taught me so much about myself, how to be more patient, how to communicate more positively, just how to be more kinder. So yeah, I literally would not be here without her. So we both put in a lot of hard work to be where we are today, but it's been so worth it. So yeah, I'm very thankful for her, very grateful for her.
And I would think as well, like, considering like the company that you met through, that with regards to the interracial relation side of things, she would be very like understanding of like any potential barriers or hurdles that you've had to jump throughout your relationship, sort of thing. Because I think that from it's my understanding that that is something that's quite common in homosexual relationships, particularly in interracial ones, where the white partner will obviously they understand what it's like to be gay, and that they have had to potentially overcome hardship as a result of it, but then they maybe won't take into consideration the fact that you then have this extra element of all intersectionality idea of like you've got sexuality to consider, but then also race as well. But like I said, I'm presuming that has been it's been good to have someone who actually understands that and is like willing to be patient in that respect as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, she's half Irish, half South American, and she's had partners who are from all over the world. So she's had experience of all different cultures and how their parents can be. So she is very understanding through experience about how hard it can be. So it just takes experience and understanding and kindness to sort of appreciate what your partner can be going through and just being there for them and just being a good partner, really.
Obviously, as yourself being someone who is bisexual, and you've said about how you were in a relationship that was heterosexual before, so you've got first-hand experience for comparison of what it's like to be with a guy and what it's like to be with a girl, and I'm presuming that you probably have maybe noticed like quite a few differences in maybe how that's perceived by not just your friends and family, but just general public, like being out and about as a couple.
Yeah, definitely. I've noticed that quite a lot. So just like walking around, holding hands with my partner, I can just feel men's gazes. Like I've got quite a good gut feeling and quite a good like sixth sense almost. So I can tell like what kind of look they're giving us. And it's like a weird, like, oh, you should be ashamed. This is disgusting. But also like, I kind of like it sort of look from them. So they're very confused, obviously, and it just I often get to the point where I want to say something to them, but my partner's like, no, just relax, like you're gonna get this all the time. But it's quite frustrating knowing that it's a lot of men from the brown community, especially, that seem to have an issue with it, and like I don't find it's the same with men from other races or backgrounds, or women even. It's a lot of the brown males that I find look at you in a particular way, or they like make a comment under their breaths. So I think as a brown South Asian community, we have a lot to do in terms of educating our men and sort of teaching them like why they can't make these sort of comments, and just educating them as to women can live their own lives. Like you shouldn't be looking at them in a certain way, you shouldn't be making comments. And so that's one thing, that's probably the biggest thing that's been uncomfortable for me, is the way that men sort of view me compared to when I was in a straight relationship. When I was in a straight relationship, no one would bother me, but all of a sudden when I'm holding hands with a girl, they like get excited, they get annoyed, all these different emotions, because they probably don't know like what emotion to feel themselves. So they then offlay their emotions onto us. It's not fair. And it's like knowing like when to say something, when to not say something. You don't want to get into trouble. Like you don't know what they could do to you. You don't know when you can like get hurt. So it's a difficult situation to be put in. And I think we just need to make more of an effort to educate these men and let them know that this is not okay to even just look at us in a certain way, and just keep your eyes to yourself, basically.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we're not even condoning the thoughts or disapproval, whatever that they might be thinking, but even then, even if they are thinking that, what is it that gives them the right, or what's the need to then vocally express that or act on it? If you're going to have those sort of negative thoughts, which obviously I'm saying that you shouldn't do, but if you are going to have them, like, just keep it to yourself. Like, literally, what is the need? Like,
it's like this thing that we have in the brown community of like the ownership over women's lives and women's actions, and the kind of like thing of, on one hand, we have such a beautiful community that is so tight-knit and strong, and there's so many connections and similarities between the different countries and cultures and stuff like that, which is beautiful. But it's created such a sense of community of like people feel comfortable enough to relay their opinion about everything and anything on everyone else and anyone else. And most of the time that will be negative things, and then it's like that the culture of like what will people say and gossip culture and stuff like that, and then how that would get around is kind of like the entitlement.
Yeah, it's the entitlement for sure.
Well, any brown men listening, you heard it, do better.
Do better.
You heard it here first. Yeah, do better.
Going on to a bit more of like a general topic, obviously, like I said, June is Pride Month. I think it's been a bit toned down, this shit. I don't think I've seen that many rainbows around.
No.
Which is interesting, because I was going to ask, like, do you think that the commercialization of it has sort of maybe reduced its message and impact? But actually, yeah, now I'm thinking about it, because normally it's like all the like restaurants and everything will like redecorate and everything, or bring out special drinks or whatever, but it's actually been quite dead this month from my perspective.
Yeah, it has been toned down, and I feel like maybe it has lost some of its impact. Like when you see a pride flag, it probably doesn't invoke a conversation as much as it used to. But on the other hand, I feel like that commercialization of it has helped, because things like shows like RuPaul's Drag Race are such a far reach that it just reaches people across the world who feel like they can't embrace their sexuality, and now they can because RuPaul is so commercialized now and so mainstream. So, for example, my little cousin who's 7 years old, if RuPaul's Drag Race wasn't so commercial, he wouldn't know about RuPaul's Drag Race, and he wouldn't be able to live his authentic self without it. So I think it has lost its impact in terms of it doesn't sort of incite a conversation or a reaction like it used to. But I think because it's so commercial, we just see it everywhere, and it's just becoming more of the norm now. And so people just see, for example, maybe a drag queen or an LGBTQ community, and they're just like, well, there's nothing different now. They're just used to it. So I think there are two sides of it, but I think it's more positive than it is negative.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, kind of coming off what we spoke about earlier as well, I suppose that is kind of the end goal, is that we don't have to, like, bring awareness to these things anymore, or, like, bring light to any struggles, because there won't be any more struggles in an ideal world. And it will be so normalised to the point where, like, we don't, it's not even there's no difference to anyone, whether someone is gay or straight or bisexual or transsexual or anything. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. I suppose in one sense, I think because we're not there yet, it's nice to still have big Pride Month, like, recognition and gestures and stuff like that, and obviously, like, throughout the year as well. But I suppose in one sense of the word, like, the main goal would be, like, to get to a point where it's so normalized.
Yeah.
And like things like RuPaul's Drag Race help.
Yeah, a lot. Helps a lot.
Definitely. I think it is, like, when obviously you're saying this, it's not the same as, like, you know, people who, for example, be like, oh, I don't see colour and that sort of thing. It's like, no, that's counterproductive. But this is like, it's sort of like we're moving towards a world where you would be able to say that. Well, yeah. Obviously we're not there yet, but, like, obviously that's where we want to be. Obviously, I think this has actually been such, like, a good conversation. Like, I've really enjoyed having it. But there might be people out there who are of a South Asian background who maybe aren't so comfortable in their sexuality, might be struggling. Do you have any sort of advice for them? Maybe, for example, thinking about your past 20 odd years?
Yeah, I would say, as I mentioned before, set really clear boundaries between your friends and family. Let them know what is okay and what is not okay, what comments are fine and what isn't fine. Making sure your feed is full of positive LGBTQ communities, full of positive LGBTQ individuals. So you should be following people like Lucky Roy Singh, who is an amazing drag queen, Shiva Rai Chandani. Who are some other LGBTQ people they could be following?
Just look at DJ Joy to the World's following list.
DJ Joy to the World. Make sure you follow me as well. And if anyone is struggling, you can reach out to me, DM me at any time. I'm more than happy to help you out with any struggles that you are having. So just keep positive, keep reading, keep educating yourself on everything, on every topic that will make you more confident within yourself and more confident to have conversations with people. So yeah, just keep living your best self. Don't give in. Don't feel ashamed of yourself because you have nothing to feel ashamed about. There's more of us out here. There's so many of us out here.
Going back to just you in general, like, obviously this is a big part of you, but doesn't necessarily define you as such. You're a DJ in your own right. You're a creative. You're a radio producer. So, like, what have you got planned as an individual for, like, the near and far future?
So I've got a few exciting gigs coming up, which are in the works at the moment, about to be confirmed. But one event that I do want to mention is a Pride special that's taking place on the 2nd of July at King's Cross in London. Scala, that's the name of the venue, Scala. So if you're in London on the 2nd of July, that's a Saturday, and you're in London enjoying Pride, make sure you come to Scala Pride. I'm going to be in the house room, going to be bringing all the vibes, so make sure you come down. And yeah, I've got loads of other things coming up, so make sure you follow me at DJ Joy to the World to keep in touch with me, all things DJing, all things radio, all things LGBTQ. And as I said, feel free to message me about anything at any time. Thank you.